What? Trail ride on my horse with friends. Nice. Mary, you read the Saturday morning cartoons?
No, I watch the Saturday morning cartoons.
Oh, you do? The things you learn.
What's your favorite one, Mary?
I live in a wall of dinosaurs. How can that not be surprising? So, I mean, seriously.
Okay, y'all. Well, here we go. Welcome, everybody. It's good to see you all today. We have another busy day, and we're going to turn to you a bit too. If you are a person that has not spoken on these calls, maybe you started coming and you've introduced yourself in the chat, but we haven't met you. We are going to give you a few minutes today just to introduce yourselves in person on camera and tell us who you are, where you're from. So if you are one of those people, get ready because we're going to turn to you shortly after Mary does our welcome for the day. So without further ado, I'll turn it over to you, Mary.
Thanks, Kristen. Good morning, everybody. I spent the last weekend with family, and so I'm sort of emotional. And that's actually not a very comfortable place to be. But I've been thinking a lot about family and how family takes on so many different forms. And of course, I've been thinking a lot about family as it relates to our anniversary tomorrow with 9/11, and thinking about COVID, and thinking about all the fires and the floods and the hurricanes and everything that we've had to deal with, and how so many people that we don't know have been responsible for keeping us safe, and how all of you have done such an incredible job this past 19 months to, in spite of everything, in spite of lots and lots of negative comments, you continue to persevere on behalf of the animals, and most importantly, on behalf of each other. And I think that has become so important because just as I have thought a lot about what both ends of the leash mean, I also think a lot about what it means for you in your shelters, in your rescue groups, as leaders, as staff, as volunteers, as board, as donors, and how much all of you have continued to try to make it better for people in your community, people on your teams, as well as the animals. And recently I saw a comment that was made in response to our friends in LA County who have done such an incredible job managing intake. And the comment was made that shelters are places where people go to adopt. They are not places where staff and employees should be happy. And I thought, wow. Well, I am here today to tell you that shelters should be places where animals and the people who work there are happy and feel protected and safeguarded and feel listened to and valued and feel a sense of importance because of the work that you're doing and how much all of you have done to get us to this place, relatively intact, I might add. And so I want to thank all of you. And with that, I'm out.
That's really nice and really sad that that's still something someone would feel okay saying. Well, we're going to turn now to some of you who haven't gotten to introduce yourselves formally on these calls. And I want to kick that off with my good friend and mentor, Tammy Barrick, who's been coming to the calls for a while, but hasn't spoken. So Tammy, will you just go ahead and introduce yourself and tell us your role? And then I want to ask you about your Facebook page, because I think all of us on this call would benefit from following it. So tell us about you. Oh, we can't hear you if you're talking.
Does help to unmute. My name is Tammy Barrick, and I'm the past chair of and founder of Friends of PAC. I worked very closely with Kristen when she was at Pima Animal Care and learned a lot from her. So I think we were co-mentors, Kristen.
Tammy, can you tell us a little bit about your Facebook page? I mean, it's actually your personal Facebook page, but it's amazing. And you tell us what you do with that page every day, because I find it really awesome and underutilized. So maybe more folks can follow you after today.
Several years back, I found myself getting very down about the negativity on Facebook. And I had two options at that point, was just totally wipe myself away from Facebook, which I came close to. And then I thought, no, I'm going to be the positive in Facebook. So I try to do it on a daily basis. I don't always make that goal, but I put on at least one quote that is a positive quote that has spoke to me, in hopes that it speaks to someone else. So beyond what I do with sharing animals and different things of that sort, that's probably my main one goal on Facebook daily.
So Tammy, you'll put your name in the chat and you're probably going to get friended by a lot of people today, but Tammy's quote the other day really spoke to me. It was, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." And every day there's a quote like that. It's a great way to start your day. So Tammy, more people should get to take advantage of your awesomeness. So thank you for kicking off our introduction. So now we're going to turn to any of you who have not gotten to formally introduce yourselves, except in the chat, and 30 seconds to a minute to just tell us who you are, where you're from, how you came to the calls, and say hi. So this is really nerve-wracking when there are a couple hundred people in the room, but you just got to jump in and do it. So I will open it up to you all.
Hi, everyone. I'm Bronwyn Stanford, and I'm the founder of a rescue in Florida called CJ Paws, Compassion, Justice, and Protection for the Animals We Save. And I'm working on getting into the shelter business is what my goal is. I'm in Miami, Florida, and nice to meet you all. And it was Dr. Levy that told me about this, and I'm really excited to be a part of it. So thank you.
Awesome. Welcome.
Can I just say something quick?
Yeah.
I may have spoken when I first came to this meeting. I'm Cindy Flogger, Executive Director of the Neenah Animal Shelter located in Wisconsin. We're a relatively small shelter. I have been in human services for a not-for-profit world for 30 years, 29 years, but this is all new to me. So the person that introduced me to this group was really a lifesaver for me because I have learned so much by participating in these as often as I can. So thank you to Ann Reed, who introduced me, and to all of you for being such great resources. And I'm going to put in one shameless plug. We are on an exciting brand new contest that the Kiwanis put together for us. It's such a unique partnership. So just Google, I'll put it in the chat, newtopdog.com, and support the Neenah Animal Shelter. It's a cool contest that I think has legs, potential for all of you down the road to think about some partnerships to raise funds for the important work you're doing.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Cindy. And thanks to Ann for bringing you to the call.
I'll go next. Hi, I'm Kathy Myers with Best Friends Animal Society, and some of you may know me from our conference. Hi, and I've ran our national conference for about 12 years, and now I'm part of the learning advancement team. So we set up certificate programs. We work with Southern Utah University and create trainings and learnings for executive leadership, for management leadership, for cat life saving, for dog life saving. We have a lot of really exciting things on the horizon. And I've been able to pop into this call a couple of times when my schedule has allowed, and appreciate the invite. I've seen a lot about this call on many of your webinars and emails that I get from Haas and from Maddie's Fund and all of that. So thanks for letting me join.
Kathy, I think most of us know you as the world's nicest conference organizer.
Oh.
So, and most patient, but it's good to see your face, and we're so glad you're here.
Thanks.
Hi, I'll go next. I'm Rebecca Mayberry. I'm the Executive Director for San Antonio Pets Alive. I've been here for about 3 years now and started as the Development Director. And prior to this, I worked for the Petco Foundation with Suzanne, and I also worked at Best Friends Animal Society, so hello, and also been in the nonprofit sector for close to 30 years.
Welcome, Rebecca. So glad you're here.
Hi, I'll go next.
My name is Amy Walton. I'm the development director at the Yuma Humane Society in Yuma, Arizona. This is my first call ever. I just started this job about a month ago. I've been a nurse for 21 years and decided to have a career change. So thank you for having me.
Cool. We need lots more of you. There's a lot of connectivity between nursing and animal welfare. So that's awesome. Glad you're here.
I'll go. My name is Jennifer Earp. I'm the director at Metro Animal Shelter in Tuscaloosa, Alabama. I've been following HAWS since it started and been hopping on the calls as I can to learn as much as possible. So hello. I've worked at this facility for the last 23 years and only been in this position for 7 years. So we've come a long way. I just wanted to say hello and thank you for doing this.
Welcome. So glad you're here.
Kristen, I'll go next.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Robert Shaw. I'm the president and founder of Wags and Whiskers. Kind of dovetails on Amy's background, but our mission is to provide peace of mind and temporary care for pets of people with medical needs. We're currently in a pilot program with the Breast Cancer Resource Center, working with their patients that are going into chemotherapy and breast cancer treatment. It's been an awesome partnership, and bridging the gap between the animal world and the health world has been so amazingly rewarding. And it's such a blessing to see reuniting people that have been ill with their pets, and the energy and excitement and positive environment is just unbelievable. So if you guys have any thoughts, want to connect, talk further about what we're doing with the human animal bond, I would love to talk to you further about it. And Amy, I'd love to talk to you further about your background with nursing and how that fits into the animal world too. So thank you guys so much.
Robert, that's amazing. We're going to have you come back and talk about that partnership. That sounds really important.
Sure.
And I haven't heard of anything like that. So
I would love to. Yeah. I mean, the idea that somebody would have to surrender their pet that's like a family member or forego their medical treatment and risk their life of death is just not acceptable. And so bridging that gap, there's just such a need for that out there that it doesn't really exist. And there's such a separation between the animal world and the human health world, and the two need to come together. So thanks.
To be continued. Thanks, Robert.
Okay, I'll go next. I'm June from Sumner Spay Neuter Alliance in Gallatin, Tennessee. And I am a 50-year lifer volunteer in the animal welfare movement. I'm from New Jersey originally. And when I moved here, there was no animal group to fit in with. So I started the Humane Society in our county. And then about 20 years later, started the Spay Neuter Clinic. And that's where I am now. Been with the Spay Neuter Clinic for a very long time. It's my heart, it's my passion, it's everything I love, it's my life. And we are, the only one in surrounding counties. So we handle the spay neuter load, and we attempt to do 10,000 animals a year. We mostly make it. This year we won't. As you all know, vets are so hard to find, and we do have some days when we have to be closed. But we're trucking along, and we're working with animal control to try to, spay and neuter and help reduce the intake. And we have done that. We've reduced the euthanasia by 80% and the intake by 50%. So, it's been a good ride. And thank you for letting me be here.
Well, I'm going to come back to you in just a minute, because we have a call for help on these calls. It's a little bit about folks who've been working in the field for a long time. So
okay.
Amazing. We have time for one more intro today, and we'll continue this next time. I just want to make sure we get to our speaker. So we need one more person to tell us who you are, where you work, and how you can do these calls.
I can go if no one else is. I'm Stephanie Fyler. I'm the new executive director at Shelter Animals Count. Started full-time at the beginning of August, but I've been in animal welfare as development and communications director at Animal Rescue League of Iowa for almost 12 years. So excited to be here in this capacity and see a lot of friends on the call already and meet some new friends as well. And we're going to be doing a lot with Haas and a lot of other initiatives that we have coming up. So excited to talk more about that later on as well.
Awesome. Congratulations, Stephanie. And we're also happy that you're here and can't wait to see the work you do. Shelter Animals Count is so important to how we all move forward together. You're a huge connection point for all of us. Okay.
Excited to be here.
I know we have our national orgs here too, and we have some really exciting things coming up. So I want to just take a couple minutes to turn it over to any of our partners who do work nationally who want to talk about what they are up to and what we all need to know.
Me, I'll go first. So hello everyone, I'm T. Fisher with Align Care. I'm just going to share my screen really quickly. We would just want to announce that registration is open for our Access to Veterinary Care Symposium this year. It will be virtual on October 11th and 12th. I will post in the chat right now the links to that, and also if you have any questions. So we are all about access to veterinary care, and just like Robert said, it's time for the union, and we are trying to rebrand family as to include the non-human family members and how they need help. So we work to help humans and non-humans in that family. So we're going to talk about a lot of the research that we've learned in our pilot year last year, where we're headed, where we're going, how we're doing our service learning, but education and research as well. So this would be a opportunity for folks to tune in and listen to how Align Care is working, how we evolved. We rolled out probably about 2 weeks before COVID. So we embraced all the challenges that came with that and took them as learning opportunities. So we just want to share all that information with you all, but also how you can set up Align Care in your own community to help even more families.
So who in the organization should attend this? Like, should this be directors, veterinarians? Like, who do you recommend register for this?
It's really anyone, because we're going to talk about all the things we've learned. So when we're going into communities, we're partnering with veterinary service providers, but animal welfare organizations, and also social service agencies that fill the needs of the human parts of the family member. So whether you, we have academics across the country who are working with us. So whether you're in academia and you want to learn about it, or a student and you want to learn about how you can bring this to your community when you graduate. Any of those that are working on research already, anybody in the animal welfare organizations, because again, it's how to get you thinking how you can incorporate Align Care in your community to partner with other resources. Align Care, we serve families who are on means tested public assistance programs, and they are in need of sick or urgent care for their pet. So we partner, we align those resources in the community, whether it's working with other seniors in the community or zip codes that you know you've targeted in your community, but then the feral community as well. So just trying to partner along and trying to align all the resources in that community. So really everyone is welcome. There's a piece for everyone to bring your community together.
Cool. Thank you.
Thank you.
This is Stacy with the Community Cats Podcast, and I'd just like to jump in and say this weekend's going to be very busy at the Community Cats Podcast. Tomorrow we have a training session from 2 to 4:30 p.m. It's a trapper certification workshop. So if you have any volunteers, any folks in your organization that are interested in learning about volunteering and how to do trapping in a safe way of cats in your community, it's a great way to learn how to do it. We have a partnership with Neighborhood Cats on that event. And then Sunday is Return to Home Day. Monica Frienden Tarrant, Christy Metropole, Corrine Bourgoin, Kim Freeman. We have a great lineup for Sunday. It's from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. and it's Return to Home Day. And you can find everything out at communitycatspodcast.com.
Thanks, Stacy.
Good morning, everybody. This is Jerica from NACA. I want to share an upcoming training as well. Our partners at Justice Clearinghouse are holding a webinar, Building and Maintaining Productive High Volume Foster Programs. It is going to be on September 15th at 1 p.m. Eastern Time. And it's going to talk about how to break down foster programs and rebuild them for success, the benefits of opening your own foster program, and then how to streamline communication with foster parents. So I'll pop the link into the chat, and that should be a good one.
Okay, great. And these learning opportunities, I think in our experience, they're attended anywhere between 1 and 500 people across orgs. I think that's relatively consistent, except for some outstanding ones. And they're free training opportunities that you don't have to send people to conferences to. And there's so many of them now. We present them here, but we also, the Maddie's and Haas weekly newsletters and information that comes out also often has links to these as well. And Bobby, do you want to talk just briefly about the one that's coming out from Haas this week?
Absolutely, Kristen. So next week for Haas is going to be a philanthropy week. So it's really going to be talking about the culture of philanthropy and some tools and tactics for your development teams. On the Monday call, we're going to have many members of the Haas working group talking about how all of your staff are involved in philanthropy from culture. Tuesday is going to be an amazing webinar that's going to be an hour long, led by Brian, the chief of philanthropy from San Diego Humane Society, and many other members. And we'll also have a presentation on next week's Friday call about philanthropy. So we're really excited. The link is in the chat, and I'll also drop the Monday link for your staff to join.
Cool. Okay, great. So we're going to move on to our first speaker today. We have Brent Tollner here from Best Friends. Brent spoke about a couple of things, gosh, was it just last week? But then the Best Friends 2020 data set came out, and we wanted this to be the first place you could find out more information about that. So Brent is here today to talk about that data set and what it tells us as we are kind of on pins and needles, wondering what the heck has been going on in shelters and what can we expect going forward. So Brent, welcome.
Thanks, Kristen. To be clear, so we do our data set in a couple of different series. We release a data set in June around our national conference, and that's when our life-saving dashboard comes up. And if you haven't seen our pet life-saving dashboard, it's a way for people to dive in and go into the shelter level and find out what's going on in their community, so that hopefully we can get people involved in what's going on in their community. But it's at a very high level, because we realize that once you get the public diving deep into the numbers, then you can overwhelm them pretty quickly. And so it's designed to be at a high level. And so then once that is released, then our team works to put together a community white paper for the animal welfare community, so that you all can get a deep dive in what's going on, hopefully so that the animal welfare community can have the data that they need to make decisions to help them improve their operations, improve life-saving across the country, and help each other out. And so I'm going to walk through a little bit of this. There's a ton of information in here, and I hope you'll find it really valuable, and I hope you'll spend some time with it. I also hope that as I walk through it and as you digest some of it, if there are other ways that you think cutting the data would be helpful for your operations or how you work, please send them to me and let us know, because we're always trying to do this. Like, this is us taking what we have from a data set, trying to share it with the industry so the industry can improve. And if there are different ways that we can share that data with you, then please share it with us, and we'll work to continue to incorporate those things. And you'll see a lot of new stuff on this if you are familiar with last year's white paper, that we took some of that feedback and put it into this white paper. So I'm going to share my screen so you can see. I'm just going to walk you through this. It's all out here on the website. I think John Dunn's on there, and hopefully John will post this in the chat over here for where it is. And I've got to move my people here. So you'll go through here. It's the state of animal sheltering. You can see the table of contents. So if you click on any of these, it'll drop you down directly into the information. We also have a download the PDF portion in here if you'd rather see it in a PDF, print it out, and be able to use it. So then there's an executive summary, just talking about just general high-level trends that's going on. I should also note, before I get in too far into this, that this data set, so Steve Zeidman comes on the calls a lot and talks about the pet health data, which is about 1,200 shelters, and he's providing you all real-time data, what's happening in 2021. Shelter Animals Count has the ability to do that a lot with a lot of the real-time data. This is the most recent date on this is 2020 data. So this is all for the year 2020. And so while it is not as timely, it's also the most comprehensive data set that's available. So this includes 3,300 brick and mortar shelter facilities across the country, which is about 75% of the brick and mortar shelter facilities. We also do the work to estimate based on per capita data to provide estimations for the volume of animals that are going into the shelters that we don't have data for. And so we have about 75% of the shelters accounted for. We have what we believe is about 92 to 93% of the volume of animals that are flowing through brick and mortar shelters accounted for here. And that's probably a little more than 3 times what shelter animals count and pet health are able to do. But again, the data is not as timely as the data that they provide. So it's just a different way of looking at the data, more comprehensive but less timely. So as we go into the life-saving gap, just some key findings. We'll talk about life-saving gap, which is kind of that gap to 90% as we would define, knowing that the certain percentage of the animals entering shelters are never going to be able to be savable and are justifiably humanely euthanized. So we do that because I think it's people at some point there will be a large number of animals that are humanely euthanized in shelters, and people, I think the general public doesn't always understand that. So that gap, when we have referred to life-saving gap as a gap to a 90% save rate. We talk about how shelter intake plummeted in 2020 by a 20% total decrease in shelter intake. That the life-saving gap is now 2/3 cats. So of the animals that are dying in shelters unnecessarily, it's 2/3 cats, 1/3 dogs, even though dogs make up the majority of animals that enter shelters. And so I think it allows us as an animal welfare community to know where a lot of our resources are needing to be tailored. More than half of the animals that are dying are dying in 6 states. Some of this is population-based, some of it is that the shelters are under-resourced, and so we'll get into some of that in there. That the live outcomes, so live outcomes decreased a lot in 2020, which I think people are surprised about, but it's just because there are fewer animals that entered shelters, and so there are fewer of them that were able to be saved. And then the human population tells us a lot about the country's life-saving needs. So where there are lots of humans, there are lots of animals. And so because animals are generally owned by humans. And so it really helps us understand that there's a really direct link between humans and the animals that we're serving. And where there are lots of humans that are in need, there are animals that are in need. So there's an introduction section. I'm not going to talk a lot about that, but I'll get into some of the history of how we've captured data in this country. And a lot of it's been very estimation based, but there's some really good back research stuff that is really interesting reading if you're interested in the going back in the Wayback Machine. But anywhere from 17 to 13.5 million animals were estimated to be killed in shelters as recently as 1980. And so we've made a lot of improvements since then. And so there's some information about some of those research studies in here and the growth towards transparency. And then we'll get into some of the details for it. So some progress indicators. So when we started, when Best Friends came out with their 2025 goal, we started collecting this data in earnest back in 2015, 2016. Just since that time, we've gone from a national save rate of 70% to an 83% save rate. So you can see there's a dramatic increase in save rates, which means there's been a dramatic reduction in animals that are being unnecessarily being euthanized in shelters. We also have findings by state. And so this is how we prioritize states, which is by volume of animals. I realize there are other ways of looking at that, and we'll get into this a little bit later in, but this is how we prioritize the top 6 states that represent about 50% of the animals that are necessarily dying in shelters. You can see those here. California and Texas make up about 25% of the entire life-saving gap in the country, just in those 2 states. The next 25% is made up of Louisiana, Alabama, North Carolina, and Florida, not necessarily in that order. The next 25% are all the yellow states here. And then the final 25% of all the animals that are unnecessarily dying are on all those gray states. The 2 green states are the 2 states, New Hampshire and Delaware, that every shelter in those states is at a 90% save rate or better. for that. And so you can dive into some of those details on it. Then we'll get into more state by state, so you can see, what their state population is, what their life-saving gap is. So that's a gap to 90% in every shelter, every community. Then we can start getting into that gap per population. So you can start seeing where population plays a role in it. And so a state like, and this is sorted by that. And so where Hawaii may have a smaller population, there are more animals dying per capita there than any other place across the country. We also have life-saving reduction and gap, the percent of shelters that are no kill and the statewide save rate on here, so you can explore that data a little bit. We then break it out by regions. I realize not everybody breaks out regions the same. This is how we've chosen to break out the regions. I will send that to other people other than me if you have complaints about what region your state is in. But for the most part, it at least helps us understand what the regional designations are on it. And then we just have a lot more information on intake and life-saving gap by region across that you can spend some time with. We also have some of the species level data. Again, I talked about this in the high level thing, the idea that more dogs come into shelters than cats, but cats make up 2/3 of the life-saving gap, I think is pretty significant information that we all should be working on. We also have findings by shelter type. So we break it out by municipal shelters, private shelters with a government contract, and then private shelters without a government contract. And so, private shelters without a government contract and private shelters with a government contract. And so, these are ones that are handling the municipal contracts. These are the ones that are not and just are probably limited to mission. And then these are truly municipal. And so most shelters in this country, the slight majority are municipal shelters, but still they make up a pretty significant number of shelters that are at a 90% or above save rate. So we have that broken out of the percent that are no kill versus those that are not no kill, and again defined by that 90% save rate for us. And we do it from muni, private without a government contract, and privates with a government contract. And you can see there's obviously, if you don't have a government contract, it's a little bit easier for you, but it doesn't mean you can't have success in other areas. And I think that's a really important piece for folks to dive into. We then break into some social vulnerability and information and some demographic information. And just so this is based on the social vulnerability index for the CDC. And so it allows us to see what the difference is between highly vulnerable communities and low vulnerability communities, and what that gap is in terms of intake and adoptions for all of it. We also share some of the same information for counties and states with Hispanic population and people speaking Spanish in the home. Again, showing the need, and families living in poverty, again, showing the need to be inclusive in our work, that we need to involve all communities and all populations in that. And so we've got some good conversation around some of that. And then just what that kind of means and a look ahead for it. We then do a trend analysis in this. And so the trend analysis is based on the nearly 1,400 shelters that we have 5 years worth of data on. So it's not the full data set because we just don't have 5 years worth of data for all of them. But it allows you to go through and see like what has changed over the course of the last 5 years. I think doing it on that set data set allows us to pull out some of the estimations and some of the things that we were guessing on or estimating on, diving into what's really happening from an intake and outcomes perspective with those shelters. And so you can see we could have it on intake and live outcomes, how that's happening. We have it broken out by shelter type as well. We have it broken out by region over time, what the intake trends are. And so like the intake trends were generally going down. There was a slight blip in 2019, and then obviously the huge drop in 2020. And then what some of those aggregate changes were. Then we also have this broken in by cat and dog intake types. And so you can see whether they're coming in from at large or relinquished by owners for both cats and dogs, or transferred in. I think it's really interesting the volume of cats that are getting transferred in as a form of intake over time, which is really encouraging because that's a number that wasn't very big not that long ago, and we're starting to grow it pretty substantially. You can also see, we grouped it all by others. So you could start seeing the trend in return to field in the cat ones as well. And then dog intake by type, which has been really pretty steady over time with a slight climb in the transferred ends. We also have the change in live outcomes and what that change has been. And again, live outcomes were going up until there just wasn't the volume of animals to account for in 2020, but it's interesting to look at. This is where you start seeing the change in aggregate live outcomes, where the return to field, we start seeing that really popping up over time for this, and a little commentary on it. Then we have the live outcomes by species. So I think this is really interesting. I think for a lot of us, we feel like cats don't get adopted from shelters at the same rate that dogs do, but generally speaking, the most likely way a cat's going to leave a shelter alive is through adoption, because they're transported at a lower rate, and they definitely are returned to owner at a greater rate, where dogs are actually on a percentage basis less likely to leave a shelter through adoption, because they do have the higher return to owner rates. And so I just think it's an interesting way of us looking at the data for what we have here. And then this is the life-saving gap over time. You saw that on the bar before. And then this is then looking at non-live outcomes and how those numbers have decreased across all different categories over time. And we have that by species as well. So then we have the 2-year and 5-year aggregate changes by shelter types. So you can see how that changes from shelter type to shelter type. And then we have a conclusion section that you can read through. And then I will encourage you, so then there's like some of this kind of research and methods and analysis that may bore you. And I hope you don't just like stop reading there, because if you can get through all of it, even if that's not the most exciting part for you in terms of how all of the things were calculated and that sort of thing, and who all of our contributors to, and I'm going to show this because this is a huge list of people at Best Friends who's involved in helping write all of this information. There is some stuff down here in the appendix that is, again, the life-saving gap ranked by state. And so this is total volume, but you also have your per capita information here as well. And then the other piece that I think is really interesting, this is brand new stuff that was, again, based on feedback that we got that people were wanting to know about this information, is basically by save rate bands. And I think this is something that you hear from advocate type people a lot, of like, there are all these shelters that are killing these huge volume of animals, and it's really not true. So if you look at this, basically for the 3,300 shelters that we have data for, almost 75% of them have an 85% or greater save rate. And it becomes even more so that, you're at 75%, 80% that are above 80% save rates. And so it really is a small number that have these kind of lower save rate categories in here. And so it's about 5% of the shelters that are saving less than 60% of the animals that are coming into them. So obviously there's some resource issues and stuff that we can do to help some of those shelters. But it is interesting to look at, those save rate bands. We have that by org type as well. So you can see what org types are in each of those categories. I think it's not terribly surprising that those that are saving less than 50%, a lot of those are really underfunded municipal organizations. And so you'll see that pop up there. And then this is even more information, a different way of looking at it by organization type. And then we also looked at this by urbanicity. So you can see looking at the CDC heavily rural versus heavily urban, what percent of those save rates are happening in urban versus rural. This is something that's shifted a lot over time as well, where I think a lot of the heavily urban shelters were really struggling for a long time. I think a lot of those have started to get the resources and are catching up, where it's a lot of the, this kind of moderately rural and heavily rural areas that are now in some of the under-resourced categories, and we need to work to catch up with on some of it. So that's the skinny on all of this. I realize that that's a fast overview on a lot of information that I hope you will spend some time with. Again, download the PDF here. If you have questions or other things that you'd like to look at, we're more than happy to hear them. And I will pop my email address in the chat so that I can help dive through all of that. And then that is it for me.
Brent, super amazing and so much to think about. And I guess like what I'm wondering is, as you at Best Friends sit around thinking about meeting this 2025 goal and you're looking at this data, like what are the 3 things you feel like you have to focus on or we as a movement have to focus on to get to this end goal?
So I would say the three things that pop out to me are, number one, as a movement, it's no surprise, like we've been talking about this a lot, that there is a lack of diversity in this movement. And as such, areas that don't look like what my screen looks like have often, we've sort of left some people behind because we didn't include them. And so we need to be more inclusive in the movement and get more people involved. I think in helping some of those folks catch up, I think the need in rural America is really important. And then I think the other thing that is becoming increasingly clear is, it wasn't 8 years ago that we would be at a conference and there were just a handful of organizations that we would always hold up as being like the pillars of life saving, and like these are the models that you need to follow. And what's happening now is that there are just way more people doing way more good work than there ever has been before. And I think a lot of them are on this call. And I think to the degree that we can get more people involved in helping other organizations, whether you're helping them with programmatic work, whether you're helping them with transfer work, whether you're just being a support system so they don't feel like they're crazy every day when they go in, like the more people we can have helping others. Because I know that mentorship was really important to me when I was early on in some of the work we were doing in Kansas City. And so be a support system for others and help find yourself a organization to mentor. And I think if we can take those 2,000 organizations that are already at a 90% save rate, and I say this a lot, if every one of those organizations adopted one organization that wasn't there yet and helped mentor them to get them there, then we would have this problem solved overnight, and it will free up a lot more resources to do some of the future looking stuff that Haas is really talking about. And so, I think we can do a lot of this in tandem and move it forward.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for that awesome overview. It was super helpful. I want to make sure we have plenty of time for our next speaker, because when we talk about data, I think one of the conundrums is it's often very focused on intakes and outcomes. And one of the greatest struggles I had as a shelter director was not being able to account for the many, many, many animals and people we were helping that never touched the shelter. And so Alexis Pugh is here from Memphis Animal Services, one of the most historically challenged animal welfare cities in America. She has completely turned that shelter around, made a world of difference there. And so she's here today just to introduce herself and to talk a little bit about how they're tracking the community-centered work that they're doing. So Alexis, welcome.
Thank you, Kristen. And do I just click share my screen to kind of show y'all what's going on? Okay. Share. All right, so there's my Zoom meeting login. I know you're excited about that. All right, let me try to move this so I can show you. Okay, so one of the first things that we tried to do was make sure that we had a lot of spots where people could find out about our community services programming. So on our website, you can go to I Need Help with My Pet. And this is where it links to our Pet Resource Center, but then there's all this information about other things. You can see like just a whole list of services on the left-hand side about helping you with your pet. But the critical thing here is if you need help from us through our Pet Resource Center, you can click on fill out this form right here. And that links directly to our shelter software system, which is Shelter Love. And so that's what I want to show you guys today is how Shelter Love has revolutionized how we track community services. The other thing that we do, just showing you how we drive people, is we have these flyers that all of our officers have out in the field. You can see they have a QR code because everything is easier with a smartphone and a QR code, and it pushes people to this form. We have signs that have the QR code outside our building, like outside the gate. We actually have a PSA running on TV that has the QR code at the end of it, so people could pause their TV and hit the QR code. And this is how they fill out a form requesting assistance through our Pet Resource Center. So
Alexis, can I stop you for 2 seconds?
Yeah.
You're going to be talking about Shelter Love, and I just want to be clear. You're using an add-on from Shelter Love that anyone can use. Like, you don't have to be a Shelter Love customer. I want people to understand this isn't just relevant if you're on Shelter Love. It's an add-on that anyone can take advantage of. So please go back to what you were saying.
No, but that's an excellent point, Kristen, because that's one of what I think is the coolest thing is whether you use it for your adoptions and your in-shelter like processes, you can sign up for the community services portal and just use that as an add-on. I find it most helpful that I have integration across the different like bandwidths of our operation. So you can see if this person asking for help has a court case or adopted, you can see every touch point they've had with your org, but even if you don't have that, you can use it. So this QR code links directly to a custom application that pushes that person's information into Shelter Love for us. So we don't even have to manually data enter. If they don't have like the way to do that, they can call, and we do have a voicemail line, and we have someone daily who pulls those voicemails and does manual data entry. So let me go over to the community services portal on Shelter Love and show you what I'm talking about here. So let me make that big. Okay, so this is the community services portal in Shelter Love. If you do field operations, you can track that as well here. And so we do that. And when you see that red line there that says activities and cases, the way Shelter Love has chosen to break this out, which works great for us, activities are non-animal control functions. Cases are things your officers do. So all of our community services activities are captured under the activities tab. This is your filter bar down here on the left. This makes it very simple to sort what you're looking for, to find out what needs action, what is still pending. So one of the things our team does is, so you can see here, activities is highlighted. That's what we're using. And then you can see over here statuses. So new and open. Open are cases that our team has already had a touch point with. So I'm going to get rid of that. And we'll just look right now at new. So someone is currently adding these cases in from voicemails and things right now. And we have pet resource specialists actively going through these 22 cases right now from oldest to newest. So let's scroll down and take a look at just a random case. Okay, so here we go. Miss Holmes, she needs rehoming assistance for multiple pets. So I can click on this case. And take a second to load. And I can see, there she is. All right, so I can see where on the map she is. I can see some basic details about her request, when it was created, who entered the activity. And then I can go over here to memos. And this is a note that was entered. Caller's neighbor is elderly. So this person's actually calling on behalf of her neighbor. Caller's neighbor is elderly, has multiple pets she can't care for, requesting rehoming assistance. So this is going to be captured as a rehoming request. If we got pictures or videos, you can upload all of that as an attachment right here as part of your case file. You can see Miss Holmes now has an associated person record. If she adopted from us or had any sort of transaction with us on the Shelter Loves or on the shelter side, I see associated animals. I can see all of her person information. And so what our team is going to do is they're going to come into this and they're going to over here, they're going to switch it to open once they do a transaction. Okay. And so they're going to call and they're going to go in here and they're going to add a new memo. Called Miss Holmes, got information, requested photographs, whatever that looks like. They were purebred dachshunds. So I referred her to Dachshund Rescue and moved on, or we're going to do a found foster appointment and put them in our system. Whatever that looks like, we're able to keep that process going in here and see all updates. And then once we have gotten to a point, so like if I hit open on that, I won't do it because it'll screw up my team. But once you've completed it, so I can go back over here to, let's see, sorry, the little share bar makes it hard to see what's going on. Let me minimize this. Let me go back. Okay, so I go back to the screen. So let's say I wanted to go to an open case that we've already had a touch point with. So let's see, Caroline Reed. So for our pet food pantry, she needs cat food and cat litter. So let's see here. Let's see what we're doing with Miss Reed. And so she has been talked to, and let's see here. So yeah, she needs for our community cat pet food pantry program. That's what she needs. Memos. Let's see. You can see right here, this is what she needed. I spoke with Miss Reed, scheduled her for a delivery on 9/17, what the address is. And then we're able to actually pull a transaction report out of this for pet food deliveries for that day, for the officer that goes and does those deliveries each day. So it's really cool. And then you can see down here, let's say I just wanted to, your team wanted to search by activity types, right? You just want to pull up what are the pending behavioral consultation requests that we have in the system. So I can sort just by that. And right now, in terms of, let's see, where was that? New and open and new. Let's see how many we have. It looks like we have one in there. And so we would be able to do that. I'm not going to pull all that up, but you can sort it by type and things like that.
So given that we're on a call with, mostly leadership level, can you talk about, we're going to start losing people, and I don't want to miss the importance of this from the leadership level. Alexis, can you talk a little bit about what this has done for the organization, kind of big picture, and how it's changed your work and your leadership?
Yeah, so I wanted to walk through and show how easy it is, but I think from a leadership perspective, one of the critical things here is it has access to reporting. So as opposed to if you were using an Excel spreadsheet or something like that, it's really difficult, I think, to capture the true impact of your work. And so like I can do different time periods and see what's in the queue, what's going on, what we've been successful with. So when you want to report out to your leadership why you've taken in fewer animals, right, but that you're still being productive and helping, you now have access to clear reporting data that is going to show that you are actually impacting more pets in your community without overfilling and going beyond your capacity level. And so we actually share in our monthly mayor's dashboard report, we show what our intake is, but we also have a full graph showing how many pets were served through our pet resource center. And as I shared on some calls before, our percentage or our number of pets served for same time period has actually increased pretty significantly by almost 10%, while keeping our shelter population lower because we're helping more pets through this pet resource center. And I think as you make the case to your leadership of, they're like, well, you're taking in fewer animals, why do you need the same budget? The case can be made really clearly from a data perspective. You still need those resources to provide assistance out at the community level instead of just it being focused on shelter intakes. And then I also like the shareability of this, as opposed to a spreadsheet. I, as the director, can jump in here at any time and see how many calls are pending, where are we at? Do I need to push more resources to this program? What's the thematic nature? What are the types of calls we're getting? Do I need to push more money to that type of programming versus a spreadsheet that is sitting on someone's computer somewhere, the whole hit by a bus tomorrow theory. So the central data source, the accessibility for you as a leader, to me, is one of the strengths of this program, that any of us can get in and review what's happening in our pet resource center at any given moment.
Great.
So I can stop sharing my screen if unless people have questions of things they want to see specifically.
I think you can unshare now.
Okay.
I'm wondering, we have a couple of minutes. Are any of you all experimenting with either this or something else to track community data? The reason this is such a critical conversation for this call is that if we want to allocate resources to supportive services, self-rehoming, lost pet reunification, we have to be able to show consistently the need for those services. And so are any of you all using anything like this or tracking those services in any way?
Hi, it's Mandy Evans with Better Together Animal Alliance, and we track our data through our helpline. So we know which types of calls we're receiving, how much help we're getting. We also track the number of pounds of dog and cat food we hand out through our food bank, and we track our rehoming through the home-to-home program so that we're able to share the impact. So we went from like 1,200 animals a year just by being in the building, or 1,600 in the building, to now helping over 9,000 animals a year.
Wow.
Oh, us here at Cabot Animal Support Services in Cabot, Arkansas, we're using Shelter Love. We're a new a new addition to them. And so we are learning all of the ways that this can help track our programs, because prior we didn't have programs that needed tracking. And Alexis has been a huge help for us after the last call that we were on with, can't remember the nice lady's name that did the Shelter Love demonstration from Mass. But Alexis has been a huge help with helping us everything from just formatting our calls that come in so that they're easily accessible, to running the reports, the custom reports that we need. So this is going to be a huge addition to keeping track of that and funding and seeing where we need to apply our money. Shelter Love's been great.
Thanks, Brandy. What I think we want you to walk away with today is knowing, I think neither Todd nor Steve is here. I know that Pet Health is also working on something that is potentially similar. But this is the future of shelter software, because there's a huge gap in, and I'm glad Stephanie Fyler's here with Shelter Animals Count. We have to start accounting for the animals that aren't hitting the institution because we serve them. And if you want to get excited about that, think about the change that's been created in child welfare, in other areas of human welfare where people don't have to be institutionalized to get help. That's what we're going for here. I mean, that is what Haas is going for, but it's, I think, widespread throughout the whole movement. There's a turn to how do we account for all of that support? And in turn, how do we get support for that? How do we get funding reallocated for that so that we can show how important those services are? So we are near the end of time today. Alexis, thank you so much for being here. And I hope you'll put your email in the chat in case folks want to reach out. And Brent, thank you for coming to present that critically important data. We are back here next week with a whole new lineup, and our ask for today, and I hope we haven't lost too many people. Our ask for today is, if you are a person who's worked in animal welfare for 15 or more years, and you're interested in talking with the folks on this call about the changes that you've seen, I'm definitely hoping we'll get folks who've been in animal welfare for 50 years, but we want to have some of you share your experiences and the transformation you've seen happen, because a lot of our history has been lost. And there's not a central place. There's a few places to look, but we're missing so much and we don't want to be. So if you are interested, we're asking that you reach out to myself or Bobby Mann at Haas so that we're putting together an hour of this call about our history and where we've come from. And we really want to hear directly from the folks who made that happen. So if you'll reach out to us in the next week, and let us know that you're interested in that. And we'll also be posting a thread in the Maddie's Pet Forum about that. So please, we want to hear your life experiences in animal welfare. We are now at time, so I hope everybody has a great day. Thanks to Maddie's Fund, as always, for hosting these calls. And I'm so glad we're all in this together. Y'all being in this room together is just, it's magic. So thank you, and have a great weekend.